everybody. This is Marian Cowagowan.
And this is David Owen.
And this is You Show Me Yours, the podcast where a married couple talks about the movies and television that we loved before the first date. And today I was made to watch The Adventures of Baron Munchausen.
We loved, huh? A little diversion there from the script.
Did I say it wrong? Oh no! 100-some episodes in, and I'm cracking up.
I'm supposed to be the one that has trouble.
Oh no!
Yes, but
sorry.
The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. Yes, which in my head, and you mentioned this too, is The Adventures of Baron von Munchausen.
Yeah.
Which he does say is part of his name. Like it's like Albus something to her rate. I don't know.
It's very Germanic.
Yes, and it is in fact based on a fictional, maybe not super fictional, German baron.
Okay, I have questions about the background of this, which I hope you can answer.
I'm saying this comes from a book.
Okay.
Which depicts much of what you see in the movie. Some of it is, you know how when you like if you wrote a book about, like if you just had to do one movie about Anne of Green Gables, you would include stuff from all of the books. So like one movie on Little House, you would include stuff from all of the books. And it's the same kind of way here. Like they kind of include little bits and pieces of other stories. And, and they weave together this, Baron Munchausen is essentially a tall tale character. He's this character who has all these crazy adventures and they seem unbelievable. But somehow they appear to actually be true. Yeah. But yeah, based on a book, from the late 1700s, 1790s.
Okay.
And yeah, the movie itself is, from, I didn't put the year up there. I think it's 1988, 87, 88.
89, I think.
89, maybe.
Close enough.
Yeah.
Close
this
enough.
movie had some production delays. So it was also directed by Terry Gilliam. We'll talk about him in a minute. One of the things that has marred his career is production delays. He creates these incredibly well production designed movies that have this just immaculate design and aesthetic and look to them, and sometimes that leads to production delays. Apparently a bit of a perfectionist. Famously, Terry Gilliam attempted to direct a Don Quixote movie. I think it was called Man of La Mancha.
I was going to say, I'm getting strong Don Quixote vibes from this. The Baron who was sort of run down and still wants to tell you about his adventures and yada yada.
So he tried famously to direct that movie, and it was a disaster production. And there's a documentary about how bad that production was. He had Johnny Depp in there, and eventually did get it made in 2018, I think, with Adam Driver and somebody else.
Okay, I was going to say,
I believe he had, it may have been Neville again, Munchausen, doing Don Quixote, or but I'm not sure, and I'm not sure who ended up doing it in the 2018 version. But yeah, so this would have been the 90s when he was trying to get this off the ground. That went off the ground. So yeah, production delays. So this is technically, so Uma Thurman is in this movie, and this was technically her first acting role, but it did not end up being her debut because of the production delays. So 87, 88, 89, somewhere on this movie, depending on where you look. And so if you've never seen this movie, let me explain to you all of the intricacies of this movie. It's not possible. Baron Munchausen is a sort of Don Quixote type character in some ways. He's a German baron who has grand adventures that defy reason and logic. And the way that the movie introduces you to this is by having a theater company, theater troupe, Henry Salt and Son, cross that out, put daughter instead, because Henry Salt doesn't have a son; he has a daughter.
And he just says, "It's just the done thing."
Yeah, it's just how you do it. And they're putting on a production, and it's all of this, oh, he's on the cheese plateau, and there's broccoli trees, and all this sort of stuff. It's just, and it's ridiculous, and he's eaten by a fish and spat out, and all these crazy things, and that sort of introduces you to the world of Baron Munchausen, and the yes.
Okay, I have a question about the style of the theater production, but finish your thought.
This is the time you want to ask.
Okay. Is this meant to be Italian? Because the makeup, and it looked sort of like Commedia dell'arte, and
it's like,
I was trying to remember. Did the Italians have a beef with the Turks? Is that
I don't think so.
Geographically,
so the actual Baron Munchausen has a beef with the Turks, and he is German.
Okay,
so that has nothing. I think they are just going for this over the top, not avant-garde isn't the word for it, but like impressionist isn't the word for it. There's a word I'm looking for, but I can't nail it down.
Now that I think of it, there's a scene in Impromptu, which takes place roughly the end of the 1700s, where they're putting on a play at somebody's house, and they've got
that's the word.
They've got makeup that's similar to this, the very pale face and the two spots of blush on the cheekbones and everything. Yeah. So maybe that was just.
I think that they are just. Time, yeah. I think this is in the town. This is a not specific place they're in. Certain characters have English accents. Certain characters have French-ish English accents. The accents. Certain characters have almost no accent. The accents are all over the place.
It's placeless.
Yeah, it's placeless. There are times when in the audience when people are yelling, and there's a Cockney accent. There's there's a German accent, there's a Scottish accent, like it's just placeless. So I think that they are just going for that sort of it's the early style of German movies, like the Casket of Dr. Caligari, and it has a name. There's a name for the movement where everything is like these flats with crazy off-kilter buildings on them, and they're going for a specific sort of style. But yeah, I don't think they're saying like, oh, this is specifically the famous French or Italian style. It's just a mishmash.
Okay, it was just honestly, it was the makeup that made me think Commedia dell'arte, but this is not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's absolutely referencing anything you can think of.
I'm sure someone put a lot of thought into it. I just didn't click, but.
Well, I think it's just supposed to be kind of all over the place, a little bit of everything.
Well,
and I think that contributes to the setting of it being sort of out of not time, but certainly out of any particular place. Like it's set somewhere.
Yeah. Well, and the Turks don't look especially Turkish to me either, so it's all just that's who these people are. Just go with it.
Yeah. Well, and in the tradition of sort of a story being told, and they do the kind of the Alice in Wonderland, the Wizard of Oz thing, where people in the theater troupe are being they're playing characters that those same actors would then later play in the real versions of those. So it's like a Tin Man, kind of thing. Like he sees these actors that look like his old companions, but they aren't. And then when you meet his old companions, it is those people. It's those same actors, those same like Hollywood actors playing the actors who are so it's a very sort of
the only one that you're going to recognize in that way is Eric Idle.
Yeah.
So just take our word for it. It's the same people.
Yeah, it's all the same people. And so Munchausen is he's this fantastical character. He goes on these fantastical adventures, and the movie frames out the theater troupe frames out some of these crazy adventures, and then the actual Baron shows up. No, that's not how it was at all.
It's all wrong.
It's all wrong. And he gets up he pulls his sword out, and he's waving it all around, and he's got a dog with him for some reason. And it's just a crazy, he just seems like a crazy old man, and he ends up starting to tell the actual story, because they're at war with the Turks. That's the whole thing. And he starts telling the actual story of why they're at war with the Turks. It's actually because of him, and they go into that whole thing. And just throughout the course of the movie, he is telling, so he ends up going on an adventure with Sally, who is the daughter of Henry Salt, the owner of the theater company, in order to stop the assault from the Sultan and the Turks, since he's the only one who can. He has to go and round up his band of merry men and then confront the Sultan. And it's a fantastical adventure. He goes to the moon. They sail a ship to the moon. They fall into a volcano and meet the god Vulcan and Venus. And they end up in a fish. They fall through the world. They end up inside of a fish. It's just a fantasy adventure movie of the sort that was almost common in the 80s and that they just don't make anymore. They make movies that are fantastical and that are like fantasy adventures for kids. But this movie isn't intended for kids. Like it's good for kids, but it's not intended for kids. And they just don't make a lot of movies like this anymore. Like I think Marvel movies have sort of replaced movies like this, or, for a time. I know Marvel's kind of fallen off, but kind of replaced movies like this. These sort of like just fun, big movies that just kind of work for the whole family. If you want to work it that way, like it's gonna have something for everybody. But yeah, this movie is one that I watched as a kid many times. We didn't own it. It was one of the $5, 5 days, 5 movies, and then we would dub them. We had 2 VCRs, and we would tape one onto the other, and
how you got your start in your life of crime.
Yeah, you go on SLP, right? Super long play, and you can get 3 movies on one cassette. 3 roughly 2-hour movies on one cassette. So you group them together. Like I think this was on a VHS with Labyrinth and Legend.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It's perfect.
Yeah,
that's a perfect Saturday.
Yeah.
Just sit down at noon and start that tape, and you're good.
Is it any wonder that our generation then grew up to create Napster and get everything from LimeWire, and we were introduced to pirating early on,
very early on. Yeah. So this is one of those movies that it's got a very special place. And I think before we started, I told you, like, I don't think I've watched this in 20 years, because it just didn't, for a while, it was pseudo lost. Like it just wasn't, no one was beating down the door to put out a physical copy of The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. And, of course it made its way to streaming, but yeah, so this has been one of those that's was a childhood favorite that I hadn't come back to in a while. And I have to say, coming back to it, it's everything I remember.
Yeah.
It all of the memories came back, the one-liners, the different deliveries from the characters, the way that John Neville plays the Baron is the thing that you have to understand about the Baron is he's old and decrepit in the beginning, and then as he starts to have adventures, he's revitalized, and his hair goes back, from silver, and his wrinkles go away. But when he's old, he's got a very sort of particular way of speaking. It's a very sort of beautiful ladies, like and he'll just go at the end of a sentence. He'll just go, yeah, makes these little noises, and it's fantastic. And like all of that came back, and all of his mannerisms are great. And just I remembered all that stuff. I remembered the Vulcan played by Oliver Reed.
That was fantastic.
And you don't recognize him, and he does a great job. And he's incredibly angry, but he's always kind of trying to suppress it.
Yeah.
And there's this juxtaposition of him in the volcano working with his Cyclops miners, and then you go into this fancy sitting room that he has with this little dainty tea set. And he'll get angry and steam will literally come out of his ears. And that was the thing that I loved about this movie, that it was just, it was playing with the edge of being cartoony and over the top. And I was super drawn to that as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
When I say kid, I'm talking like 8 to 10 years old or whatever. Like, I guess I was probably 8 or 9 when this movie came out. Being drawn to that in these early years of watching these fantasy movies, Dark Crystal, Legend, Labyrinth, this movie, and wanting to do this. Like, this is one of the movies that made me want to make movies.
Mm-hmm.
I gave up on that pretty quick as a possible future like career, because I just didn't have access to this stuff. Like, if I had been one of those kids that somehow had access to a video camera,
Mm-hmm.
like, I would have drugged my family and everybody I knew into making like the dumbest possible movies.
You would have been Dawson Larry.
Who?
Excuse what?
I
What generation are you from?
I don't know who you're talking about.
From Dawson's Creek?
I did not watch Dawson's Creek.
You didn't have
I'm
to
sorry.
watch it. It's just in the zeitgeist.
Nope, not for me.
Lord.
Not for me. I know that
Have
one.
some cultural
I know
literacy.
that one guy from Varsity Blues.
That guy. That's Dawson. Okay. Anyway.
Wait, that's Dawson?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So, but yeah, this is one of those movies that just, Jim Henson had a big impact on me, especially his stuff, his non-Muppets stuff. Though I loved his Muppet stuff, but like Dark Crystal and the storyteller stuff that he did, which was retelling, legends of old and stuff. Loved all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then even all the Muppet stuff, and Fraggle Rock especially was another big one. But yeah, this was one of those movies that made me want to like be a filmmaker for a short time. And it's well, okay. Before I just talk about this movie for an hour, how did you feel about this movie?
It was a lot of fun, and silly.
Yeah, you were chuckling a lot.
Yeah. And I think it's so we commented at the beginning. It's rated PG, but the notes say there's nudity in it. And it isn't so like Uma Thurman is Venus, on the half shell with her, her hands and her hair wrapped around her, covering the bits.
Yeah.
And that's as nude as anybody gets.
Well, so it's not.
Okay,
so there are two parts. So first of all, you can see and this is what I was saying. I need to see how am I remembering this.
Well,
so I remember seeing a full nipple in that scene.
Okay.
But what you see
is the areola,
the top of it. Areola.
Yeah.
Like you see the top of it.
Yeah.
For a split second, and I remember a full nip, full on nip shot. That is not what happened. But also in the Sultan scene, there is a big fat lady who is pantsless, who is walking away from the camera.
Well, I noticed that, but I thought that it was actual flesh-colored pants.
Maybe it was, and maybe that's how they get away with it. But it absolutely does not look like there's any pants on that person.
I thought it was meant to be something, and again with the style and the commedia dell'arte, like ha ha, it looks like she's naked, but she's not, ha ha.
Right, and what I'm saying is, if that's what it was supposed to be, they over succeeded.
Okay.
They overachieved on that because it 100% looked like that lady was bottomless.
But anyway, what I was going to say was there were some grown-up jokes that like,
you also have to remember this is right around the invention of PG-13.
Yeah.
So I think that this movie came out a couple years later. It's a solid PG-13.
Yeah. Yes. Well, my favorite thing is, though, there's this, so the king and queen of the moon.
Oh, yeah. We'll put some time into them, but yeah, go ahead.
Yes. So their heads can detach from their bodies. And at some point, the Baron is explaining it to Sally, and he says, oh, their heads can do intellectual things and their bodies can do physical things, and we think we know what he's talking about. And later they're talking with the head of the queen of the moon, and she's giggling. She's like, oh, the king, he doesn't know I'm gone. And she's making all these noises that sound like, arousal, And Sally says, what is he doing to her body? And the Baron's like, he's tickling her feet with a feather, which we think is also...
He doesn't say with a feather.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway.
He says tickling her feet.
Yeah, and we think like, oh,
And they're like,
yeah. And then the punchline is that is exactly what he is
they
doing.
show them later in bed, and he is literally tickling her
So
feet.
just like lots of silliness and giggles, and and there's a large Robin Williams probably ad lib in there, which is always funny. R.I.P. And it's just silly and fun, and I thought I knew where it was going, and I didn't exactly. So it's like it's a familiar feeling fairy tale, but it's not predictable.
Yeah, it very much is. And I wrote tall tale because that is really like, it feels like a lot of American tall tales, Paul Bunyan, Johnny Appleseed, and like the Jack Tales and all that stuff.
Yeah,
it has that feeling, that familiar feeling.
The other fun thing was, so Sally, the actress who plays Sally, are you familiar with her?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's Sarah Polley, who played Ramona in a series around this time, and then she was on an Anne of Green Gables adjacent show that I think was on the Disney Channel that I never saw, but so she's in that world, and she doesn't act very much anymore. She mostly directs, and I forget what she's done, but she's, I think, pretty well respected. I think her films have been nominated for a couple of Oscars and everything, but she got her start as this, like cute little kid actress, and here she is with these like janky teeth and ragged bangs and stuff, and she's adorable. So that was fun to see. I felt like, I know her. It's one of my friends.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and she's done a lot of good things. I was going to pull her up, but I've got other stuff pulled up on the phone. So mentioned Robin Williams, John Neville, who you don't know from much. He was a British television and movie actor, and this movie kind of revitalized his career. He was in sort of the waning half of his career. He was like 60 when he made this movie.
Okay. Yeah, he looks familiar, but so he also just might have that face.
So Americans will potentially know him from The X-Files, where he played the character known as the well-manicured man, who is not the cigarette-smoking man.
Right.
But was another sort of friendly to Mulder man who would show up. I think he's in like 8 or 10 episodes throughout the series. He was a regular. He was reoccurring. He's, but Neville's been in a lot of stuff. John Neville, Eric Idle, of course, you said Sarah Polley, Oliver Reed, who most Americans would know from his last role, which was as the mentor guy in Gladiator. Yeah. The guy who trained with the white goatee, who trained Maximus,
who, if memory serves, died during filming because he drank himself to death.
He was a notorious drinker. And then there's a lot of like, there's people you would know, like you would have seen their work without knowing them. Jonathan Pryce is a big one. Jonathan Pryce is in. He went on from this movie to be in a ton of stuff. He is also famously in the Gilliam's previous movie, Brazil, which we will watch, which has a lot of the same DNA. It's even written by Gilliam and his writing partner at the time. And then other people that you would have seen in stuff like Jack Purvis, the little person.
Okay. The guy who played Sally's father looked really familiar.
That was Bill Patterson. But he's been in a lot of stuff, like pulling him up. I don't know what his like he's in Ted Lasso. Like he's just in a little bit of everything, even still to this day, it looks like.
You know what though? I'm realizing, who he looks like most?
Who's that?
Is Jonathan Lemire, who's on MSNBC. He's one of the talking heads.
I know the guy.
That's what he looked like.
Yeah. But just a lot of familiar faces, and a lot of people just chewing up scenery. Like Patterson is absolutely chewing up scenery. And he's doing this just completely theatrical on purpose. He's Henry Salt, the leader of the company,
and he's playing the Baron at first, right?
Yes,
because he's got a wig and this
he's got a wig and a big fake nose.
Yeah, so it was hard to tell, but
he's just Sally. I am the Baron Munchausen. His voice is like up and down in register, and it's just it sounds like someone doing an English accent. And of course Uma Thurman, who plays Venus and also plays one of the ladies in the town that he's trying to rescue. Um, yeah, it's just a movie full of actors that seem to be having a great time just cutting up. Robin Williams, of course, as we said,
R.I.P.
like, Robin Williams, probably just got a blank script that was like, that said like,
start here, end here,
that just
have
said
fun.
like, hey, so the King of the Moon doesn't like the Baron because he thinks that his wife likes the Baron. And by the end of this, he needs to get away with his companion. And that's it. Like, figure it out between there. And he does his Robin Williams stuff where he's going in one direction, then he hard turns in the other. He does the voices. He does a different voice for when the head is on the body. Versus when the head is off the body, it's like a sort of soft and kind of feels
a little more
thoughtful and intelligent. When it's on the body, it's just like, hey, and he's just having a hell of a time. And it's one of those performances. It's like proto Genie performance.
Yes.
Where somebody just put him in a scene and just said, just do it.
Just have, like, if I try to direct you, it'll ruin it. Just go have fun.
You don't get Robin Williams in a movie where, like, you put Robin Williams in Good Will Hunting. Like, that is a dramatic role. He's gonna read a script. But you put
even then there probably was some
there's a ton of ad-libbing famously in Good Will Hunting, including my favorite line where he says he stole my line, which was a total ad-lib on Williams' part. Son of a bitch, he stole my line. But you don't get him in a situation like this and have him sit through an hour of makeup and you put like the head of a violin on his head, or like it's like a column. I think on the Queen it's like a violin or like a cello, and on him it's like a column, like a marble column. You don't put him through that and then say like, okay, say the joke that the least funny guy in Monty Python wrote for you.
Right.
The guy that did the graphics in Monty Python,
say it exactly as written,
just how he wrote it.
Okay, now can you do it again, but with more emphasis on the verbs this time?
So it's one of those movies. It's just fun to watch. It doesn't take itself seriously at all, but it also takes itself deadly seriously. One of the things I was saying, like, it looks amazing. The production design is wonderful. Like, the real sets that are in this movie, the dressing of like the Sultan's area with all the people and the eunuchs and the treasury room, and it has this giant lock on it, and all of the when the Sultan's attacking the city, the elephants with like towers, like turrets on the back of them with people shooting arrows out of them.
The elephants who are defeated by a mouse.
Oh
my gosh, that was fantastic.
Yeah, and just the costuming, the Baron's costume. It's just multiple layers of different interesting things going on in the Baron's costume. He's got a little tiny hourglass that he uses to time things.
He's got an infinite supply of roses in
he's
there that he pulls out for all the ladies.
Yeah. Ladies,
beautiful ladies. You remind me of Catherine the Great.
And I love that all of his companions roll their eyes, no matter whether if it's in the past or in the present. Yeah, his line is, "Your beauty reminds me of Catherine the Great, whose hand in marriage I once had the pleasure of declining." And then the guy also goes, "They all remind you of Catherine the Great." Well,
different parts,
different aspects of each. Like.
Basically, this guy has mad Briz.
Yes.
And everyone else is a hater.
Yes. But just it's just one of those movies. Like, there's the production design is just it is a Terry Gilliam movie. Like, when we watch Brazil, which I guess I'll maybe not put Brazil next, but I'll put it soon. So that you still have this movie kind of sloshing around in your brain. Like, that's what he does. Like, back then, like, that's what he did. He crafted these immaculate movies that were just full of fantastical, imaginative things The moon, and it really is. A lot of it is so Jim Henson like, especially in stuff like the Labyrinth and Dark Crystal, the moon, just having these like half statue faces poking out of the ground.
Yeah.
When they start into the to meet the king and queen,
Yeah.
there are all these like paper cutouts or like flats of buildings and stuff that are all moving around.
Yeah, and then they're kind of like blocked in, and here's the king. Like,
Yeah, and it's just everything about it, the design, and a lot of this stuff you will also see in Meaning of Life, which I think is the last Python movie, and he was doing so much of that in those movies too. The design of death in this movie is great. It has these dark wings and a skull head with red hair coming out of it, and the use of color in this movie is not as much as some of his other stuff, but it's still great. It's pops of red and bright colors, and he just has a way of, in this part of his career, he just had a way of styling a movie, and he does it with great restraint in Brazil, which we'll watch, on purpose. He makes that an oppressive future on purpose, whereas in this he does this great juxtaposition of when we're in the real world with the old Baron who's telling the story, and when we're in his tales. Everything's brighter and more exaggerated. It's just, again, it's one of those things that just made me want to make movies like that, and now this would all be CGI, and it would be these actors on a green screen. Maybe there'd be some sand going up to a hill or something, and it's not that I hate modern movie making and the green screens and stuff. When it's done well, I think it's great. It's that I just miss this.
Well, I think it's like so many other things, right? When you know how to do it the old-fashioned way / the quote the hard way, and then you have a computerized way, a shortcut, a faster way, whatever, you're still thinking like the old way, and so there's some structure underpinning what you do. Whereas if you only ever learn to do it the fast way, the new way, there's something missing, I think. Not always, but there can be. I think it's, at some point the Baron said something, and I forget the exact line, but it was something along the lines of like, there's no wonder anymore, or there's no magic, or something like that. And I feel that in, the 21st century. But I think that's applicable to filmmaking too, or any discipline where you used to have to do it the hard way by hand, and now you can just snap your fingers. And if it's too easy, there's no wonder in it anymore.
Well, and there's something to be said about it, right? Like there's something to be said about the skill that's involved and how you translate it. There's the famous behind the scenes about Jurassic Park, where they got all of this technology together to do these digital dinosaurs, and they just looked like crap. It wasn't the quality; it was just how they looked and how they moved around. And then they brought in Phil Tippett and these traditional stop motion animators, and set them loose on it. And because they had this skill set of stop motion, they approached it like stop motion. And they just made this timeless thing that, like, to this day, and they understood, right? Because they understood how to shoot a scale model of a T-Rex. They understood that when you made a digital T-Rex, keep it in the dark, make it wet, because everything looks better when it's wet. Don't shoot it too long. Keep it the shadows going across it. Do the things in the foreground to establish scale. They knew all these tricks, and you see this too with like some of the early computer animated movies where they were using traditional animators, and there is something to be said about that. And it's getting a lot better. They've learned over the years with special effects, with these computer generated special effects. You need to have someone on set. You need to have a someone from that department needs to be on set. They need
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
they need to take in the lighting conditions. They need to photograph things on set. They need to be consulted
Mm-hmm.
about, hey, is this shot going to give you what you need? Is this, plate, as they call them, the backgrounds that they put the 3D animation in front of with the real actors, is this what you need from us? How can we shoot this differently to get the effects to work? And they've learned that over the years, whereas before it was just, they were just like,
Yeah, drop it in.
it's on a blue screen and we'll just figure it out later.
Yeah.
And a lot of that early Star Wars stuff suffered because of that, and
Mm-hmm.
that got that bad reputation as quote unquote bad CGI, when it really isn't. It's just they hadn't figured out how to integrate full CGI set replacements into narrative.
Well, and you could look at it as the science of something evolves, the quote, the easy way becomes the new hard way, because you have more rules underpinning it and more ethics is not the right word, but just best practices, and like you figure this out. And there's a rule, and it gets quoted in writing classes a lot. I'm sure it applies to lots of different things, but you have to know what the rules are in order to break them.
Yes.
And I think in something like this, where there is this element of sort of fantasy and maybe a little bit of an unreliable narrator, and the scales change, and because like on the moon they change size several times, and so there are rules being broken, but you have to know what they are in order to break them in a way that's believable and entertaining, and that works. So you're seeing the evolution of the technology changing.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I just want to call out is some of the not innovative, but incredibly interesting shots that they do in this movie. So if you're watching it for the first time, like things to look out for, like I love the when he rides a cannonball. When he's kind of holding on to he's riding a mortar shell that's got these 2 rings on. He's kind of holding on to it. He comes back then riding on a cannonball. He does this, exchange in midair. The way that's animated, because at some point that's a puppet. The way that death is handled, the way they shoot death. There is an amazing scene where old Baron is telling his story, and it gets interrupted by the Turks attacking. This is early in the movie. And amongst the chaos, everybody's running, and Sally finds him backstage, and death is looming over him, and she throws a candelabra at him. And when she does, she throws it at death, but when she throws it, it hits a flat with a painting of death on it, and that burns away to reveal the Baron behind it. And it's just this moment of like, she was looking at death, because this whole movie is about what is real and what isn't real. When they're showing you something, is the Baron telling us this, or is this happening now? And it's just one of those shots where I saw it again, during this, and I remembered it from when I was a kid even. But yeah, that shot where death is looming over him, she throws the candle at him, and it hits the flat, and the flat burns away. Like just an amazing shot.
Yeah. Fun.
Yeah. And my other favorite shot is when they tie a rope to the crescent point on the moon and slip down it. And they have a great joke in there where it's a lock of the Queen's hair, who of course was very large on the moon. The Queen and King of the moon are very large. And they're climbing down the rope, and they run out of rope. And, Eric Idle's character Bertold's like, oh, we're out of rope. And Baron hands him down some more rope. And, he's like, where did you get this? Like, well, from the top, of course. Like, where else would I get it?
Yes.
And then like, there's the moment,
I knew
realization.
exactly where it was going.
And then they fall.
Made me wait like a beat longer than I expected. And I was like, oh, wait, maybe they're
because you're like, they're just going to tie this off to the bottom of the rope and keep going.
Yeah.
But that scene where they tie off to the moon. And then there's a visual gag where when they land in the volcano, Vulcan and all of the Cyclopses are looking down on them in this little crater that they fell into, and they look tiny again, like they were on the moon. And he even calls them tiny. And then when they pull him out, Baron is actually taller than Vulcan. Yes. and just a great little sight gag. But then this movie is just full of great visuals like that and gags. There's the gag with the organ that is a torture device.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that was fantastic.
And so the Sultan has him. They make a bet. So the way that this war gets started is that they make a bet that basically the Baron can produce a better glass of wine from 1,000 miles away in Vienna or wherever, and
in 1 hour.
And he sends Berthold, who can run very fast. And while they're waiting, the Sultan is performing this opera that he's writing.
Well, first he says, "Would you like to hear my newest opera?" And the Baron's like, "No, thank you.
No, thank you."
Keeps going.
And he just keeps going and keeps playing it for him. And the song that they sing, the songs that he sings are great. And of course, it's written by Eric Idle and his composing partner, who did all of the Monty Python songs and did like Spam-A-Lot and all that stuff. And so it's a great comedic song. There's a song about a eunuch called "Cut Down in My Prime." Like it's just great. And they have the gag is that it's this like organ,
and the backside,
and when it goes around, there's all these knives poking into people, and the music that's playing isn't organ music; it's people going as they get poked with just a great visual gag.
Great.
Like how expensive that must have been to do for just that little gag.
One other thing that I enjoyed, and this isn't visual, but when right before they land in the volcano with Vulcan and everybody, Vulcan and his workers are basically arguing about a labor contract.
Yes, yeah, they're negotiating
they're like,
a contract.
2% and no more. No, we need 6. Blah 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 blah. And then later, when he's having a marital spat with Venus, she calls him a petty bourgeoisie, and I just was like, I'm not sure the greater import of that, but I like that little callback.
Yeah, this movie has a lot to say. Like that's the thing about it too, and the reason that I say that it's not just for kids or not just geared towards kids. It has a lot to say about imagination and the sense of wonder in the world and growing up and leaving behind these fantastic ideas. And this, the Baron is about possibility, right? He's like, anything you can imagine is possible. And he experiences these things, and he takes Sally along on this ride with him of experiencing these things. And the hook at the end is, he starts out by telling a story, and then that transitions into a real adventure where they escape the city in this balloon made of pantaloons and knickers.
You were talking about Wizard of Oz. That had clear Wizard of Oz vibes, especially when the dog jumps out and
big
everything.
Time. Yeah, and he escapes the city and Sally stows along, and they go to the moon, and they go to the volcano, and they go in the fish. They do all these things, and then he gathers up his merry men. They come back. All of his band are all old now, and they've the guy who could see super far is blind in one eye. The guy who had great hearing needs a little ear trumpet. And the big strong man has decided he wants to be dainty.
Yeah,
and he loves serving tea and wearing doilies and things. And basically and Berthold, who's the fast guy, can't run anymore. And they all overcome these challenges, and the Baron, leads them to victory against the Sultan. And then in the end, this character we haven't really talked about, Horatio, who is just this representation of progress and science and technology and growing up and leaving behind these childish things, is so incensed at being essentially outdone every step of the way.
Made a fool of, basically.
This isn't this is foolish. We need to negotiate. Like at the end with the Sultan, he's literally negotiating the surrender, and he's like, well, no, you have to surrender this time because we surrendered last time. Like this transactional thing. There's even a comment earlier about the Sultan's bombarding the city, and he's like, this can't be right. It's Wednesday. Like they're doing this on a schedule, and he's so incensed at being effectively defeated by the Baron defeating the Sultan, that he shoots the Baron and kills him. And as they're lowering the casket into the ground, and the whole city is, erecting the statue to him and praising him and loving him, his voiceover, and that was just one of the many times I died. And you're back in the theater, and the whole movie has just been him continuing to tell
Yes.
the story. And then they're all, Horatio is like, it's rubbish, whatever. He's like, let's open the gates. And they go and open the gates, and sure enough, the Turks are gone. The Sultan's army's defeated. So it's this thing of like, did he do it, or did it happen because he imagined it? Is it the power of imagination? And then he rides off into the sunset and then disappears. And he as abruptly as he appeared in the life of this town.
It's kind of like Mary Poppins.
Kind of, yeah. So yeah, is the Baron this stand-in for hope? Is he a stand-in for not losing the wonder, not giving in to the Turks are and Horatio are the pressures of growing up and maturing and leaving behind these childish things and the harsh world that's outside your gates.
And it is not lost on me that at the beginning he shows up and all the actors are like, "Oh, go away, old man, he's crazy." Blah blah blah. Yeah. The only one who believes him is Sally.
Yes.
So
yeah. So it's this great. It's basically, this movie has something to say. Like, and you kind of you give it as much of that as you want to. As a kid, of course, I didn't see any of that. As an adult, I see much more. Also, knowing, like I said, Brazil, knowing everything that movie is about. His previous movie and as many of his movies that will come after that. Like, a lot of his movies are about these societal norms and breaking through them, and odd people doing odd things, odd people doing important things, in a way that is just not common. Trusting like The Fisher King is a movie that is about redemption and in multiple ways, and mental health and all these different things, and it, it's all wrapped up in the guise of a man who is imagining that he is a knight and imagining in the similar way that that the Baron could be, that he's gone on these adventures. So yeah, there's layers to it, but you can watch it and just enjoy the jokes and the fun and the silliness, and all this stuff. I do want to say, and we should have said this earlier, we've been glazing Terry Gilliam. Terry Gilliam is very likely a piece of garbage. He did some anti-Me Too stuff. Yeah. He did he's anti-trans, as far as I can tell. He did a whole thing about declaring himself a black transgender lesbian.
Oh, gross.
And he is that sort of mediocre that all white men with privilege become as they get older. They sit back. It's sort of a Joe Rogan kind of thing. They sit back and they see this world that isn't made for them anymore, and they just go, "Oh, well." I think one of his actual things was like, "Oh, the white man's blamed for everything in this world now. Like, I'm just tired of the white man being blamed for everything." Like, well, the white man kind of did everything that he's being blamed for. But yeah, so as far as we can tell, Gilliam's a piece of trash.
Oh, that's too bad.
And it's just one of those things, right? Like, this is the story of the last 10 or 15 years, right? Like, people who Neil Gaiman is the most recent one to be a pervert or whatever he is.
Although, to be clear, like, that's actual physical assault and sexual assault. That's far worse than someone just being saying dickish things.
But this has been the world that we've been navigating for at least the last 10 years, of like, the people who made the things that inspired, in a lot of ways, the fringe communities, the LGBTQ communities, the sort of artsy progressive communities. Gaiman and Gilliam are huge for that. Basically being outed as trash people, and figuring out how to deal with that, figuring out how to deal with, like, this guy who, like I said, like, there's like two different rolls of the dice, or two different totals that the dice could have summed up to in my life at two different times that could have put me, I could be a filmmaker right now, like, with just a couple of different die rolls. and you would have 10 years of interviews with me saying how Terry Gilliam was my biggest influence.
Mm-hmm.
And that, that would
And
be,
then you gotta
that would be
look
rough.
yeah. Yeah.
Now, and you have writers who cite Gaiman, as a huge influence, and it's tough. Yeah. Coming to terms with the fact that, the people that inspired us to do art, are not deserving of the admiration that we have given them over the years is tough. And it's a weird place to be. And it's not, it's not the same as like, don't meet your heroes. It's not like they disappointed you because they just weren't like,
they were grouchy.
They were just in it for the money, or they were grouchy, or they were rude to their servers, or, it's that they were actually trash people. So I think Gilliam's still getting work. I know that he had a production of Into the Woods shut down at some point, a theater production, because of a lot of this stuff coming out. But as far as I know, I think he still gets work in Hollywood. I don't know what he's done lately, but he has movies, in the last 10 years. So,
well, he should have an interesting 4 years then. So make it count.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And Gilliam, famously the only American member of Monty Python, known for doing the graphics. Like I said, all of those funny, very iconic, cutout imagery, that the big foot crushing crushing the people, the meat grinder grinding in, and Monty Python words coming out, did all of that stuff, and was doing very interesting, subversive sort of art in a time before that stuff was easy to do on computers. A lot of art to it, a lot of craft to it. I mean, could be the inspiration to all of us Americans to be, but is instead an inspiration to some of us Americans to be angry at the world.
Yeah, well, and that was when women and non-white people, we all knew our place, and we stepped aside and let the white men be creative and edgy. And I really think part of this is they're like, but I want to be the special boy who creates new things. All of a sudden there's more competition. That's not fair.
Oh, I think there is some of that. But so anyway, Adventures of Baron Munchausen, it's a tough movie to talk about. I didn't want to sit and kind of recap every single point of it. But it's a fantastical adventure that is, going to do fine for the kids. It's got a lot of stuff to offer. It's got a lot of depth. It is a movie that doesn't really get made anymore. It was a financial disaster of a movie in the theaters. And again, why? Like, this movie is fun. It's visually great, pleasing. All of the imagery is great. The production design is great. Like, it's very, it's the sort of movie that should do really well. And for some reason it didn't. And it did, luckily, this was 88 or whatever, it didn't lead to Gilliam necessarily dumbing down his style. If you're not familiar with his work, he did Time Bandits and Jabberwocky and 12 Monkeys and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and all sorts of stuff. He helmed the movie, Heath Ledger's last movie, Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, which they finished by using other actors to play that role. Several other actors, has done some really incredible stuff. And this didn't derail his career in the way that we've seen some of these directors that made this one movie that just didn't hit, and they never got a chance again. He got a lot of chances, luckily, and made a lot of, luckily again, his present behavior, his behavior notwithstanding, he got a lot of opportunities to make pretty cool art and made some pretty cool art. So we will definitely see at least a couple more Terry Gilliam movies before this whole thing is over. So
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
That's it.
Well, folks, we would love to know what you think about this. Tell us how awful you think Terry Gilliam is.
Read about it.
Yeah. If you want to defend him, don't. We're not here for it.
Don't worry about it.
But you can reach us in a couple different ways. You can send us an email or you can find us on Facebook. Our handle's the same for both. It's YSMY Podcast, YSMY for You Show Me Yours. We're at gmail.com or DM us on Facebook. Also on Facebook, you can find links to our latest episodes. We have new episodes every other Wednesday. So 2 weeks from today, no matter when you're listening, there'll be a new episode up. And our next episode I am hosting. And we're coming up on the 5-year anniversary of the start of the COVID pandemic, at least 5 years from like my perspective. To me, March 13th is the day that the world kind of shut down. I know in some places it was earlier, but for my perspective is what matters most.
Of course.
Really.
Of course.
So in March, we're going to talk about 2 pandemic related movies. And I thought that Dave had seen this one, but he has not. So I'm going to show him Contagion, which was, I think, from like 2011. So it breaks our rules a little bit, but he hasn't seen it. So it's fine. And it was Steven Soderbergh, I think. And that was sort of my my primer for all things pandemic. I felt very prepared for it. I watched this again in the first couple weeks and I was like, oh, okay, now I know what they're talking about on the news. But it didn't exactly work out the same way as in real life. So we'll talk about Contagion next time. In the meantime, this has been You Show Me Yours. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye. The You Show Me Yours theme song is Uplifting Electronic Indie by Winnie the Moog from filmmusic.io.